For the purpose of this assignment as a group, we were given a short film clip with no sound on it whatsoever. The task we were given was to create a complete soundtrack for the clip, which included the Foley, ADR, atmospheres and sound effects. The challenge was to create the complete sound design for the animation movie Elephant's Dream. This is how we went from this to this.
We decided early on that the use and layering of atmospheres was key to holding the scene together, especially in the first half where the on-screen action is somewhat limited and it is more about the mood of the scene and the interaction between Prug and Emo.
Other key atmospheres in the first half of the scene include the plot mechanism, which we see coming in and out of shot. This was a combination of 3 audio samples layered together, edited and then synced to picture. Using a combination of reverb and volume automation, we could push the sound further back or bring it forward in the mix depending on whether the mechanism was in shot or not.
Layered into our atmosphere beds were field recordings. We harvested some usable machine sounds and atmospheres from the Museum of Science and Industry, which are mixed into our background sounds. As the museum is a public place, we recorded a lot of unwanted noise, so we had to trim this audio down into usable clips and loop them into form a bed.
The other atmospheres we see are either related to on-screen elements, such as the constant chatter of the typewriter, whirring of fans or the hum of electricity, or things the viewer cannot see. More distant atmosphere beds, such as low-frequency rumble, the sound of factories and ventilation sounds, run throughout the whole of the sequence, giving the viewer the sense of something beyond the first space that Prug and Emo inhabit. Our animation sequence obviously exists within 2 quite different spaces in a fantasy world. We wanted to keep the spaces relatively simple and both quite different. For the room in the first half of the sequence, we used a moderate sized reverb with a decay of half a second to emulate the room that Prug and Emo are in. It doesn't appear too large, and with objects in it, it would yield a relatively diffuse sound. We kept the vocals relatively dry and with little reverb, as they are mainly quite close to the camera.
You're not paying attention.
Just wanted to answer the phone.
Emo.
As Prug and Emo enter the second part of the scene, we have used a much larger reverb with a decay of approximately 6 seconds to emulate what can only be described as a huge metallic abyss and to differentiate between the 2 spaces in the scene.
Foley is the name for the sound effects which are synced to picture, such as the sound of footsteps, clothes and so on. This involved recording the sounds whilst watching the film to try and match the audio and the video as closely as they can possibly be. Footsteps in particular were very hard to record because it's hard to replicate how somebody else would walk to the exact precise second. Not only did we record footsteps in the studio, we recorded some footsteps on location as well to try and get the sound of how Prug would walk.
When recording the clothes Foley, we brought a range of garments into the studio, but especially creaky leather items which would make an exaggerated sound. Then we experimented with microphone placements, how we held the garments, how we moved them, in order to get the perfect sound for the film. We used the different clothing and footstep sounds to show more of the difference between the 2 characters. Prug we saw as a sort of older, creaky, hard character, and he needed sort of creaky, hard sounds, whereas Emo is softer in character, and so his clothing sounds are softer.
For Prug's footsteps on the metal platform into the typewriter abyss, we used some heavy-soled shoes and folded them to picture using an empty equipment rack mic'd from underneath. With some simple nudging in Pro Tools and some time stretching, we were able to get these to fit. For the voice of Prug, we were lucky to have an actor friend of one of the crew in town who saw the clip and wanted to have a go at doing the voice.
Tired? The machine is like clockwork.
We were all agreed it should sound hard, officious and very northern, kind of Coronation Street meets steampunk.
You have to learn to listen. This is not some game. We could easily die out here.
After several run-throughs and some minor amendments to the script, so the lip sync was better, we had enough material to work with, and with some simple comping and nudging in Pro Tools and a little bit of time stretching, we were able to get the voice to fit.
In addition to the dialogue direction from the original script, we added to a more non-vocal sounds from Prug to bring him to life. In particular, coughs, grunts and groans, which appeared to work with this character. This is a good way of conveying the nature of a character without using speech.
For Emo, we decided to use a woman's voice to really get the contrast between his high voice, as we felt it should be, and Prug's low grumpy tone.
Just wanted to answer the phone.
Afterwards, his speech was repitched in Pro Tools by lowering it a few semitones, which gave it a slightly more male tone.
Just wanted to answer the phone.
From the outset, the group were in agreement that we should try and record as much original material for our sounds as possible. If we couldn't find the right sound, we would use sample libraries and edit these to make them work. In most cases, we've used a combination of found sounds and sample libraries to create our sound effects.
We felt that the two robots in the scene needed to have a sense of a rusty, unmaintained, undeveloped technology rather than a slick, futuristic sci-fi genre. We recorded a creaking sound at the museum, which we laid into the mechanical effects. It gave the robots a bit more character and brought them to life.
The monster film was more difficult to produce audio for, and with the exception of the whispered emo, was made up entirely of layered and processed audio samples. A total of 9 different audio samples were layered, and these included demonic voices, howling dogs, hissing snakes, distorted water, plops and growling, and were all automated in level and sent to a group master to enable overall control and processing. The group master has an automated bandpass filter, as we wanted to create a telephonic sound when Prug is holding the receiver.
Listen to the sound of the machine,
which then becomes full bandwidth when the creature appears from out of the phone. We initially tried automating the mute control for the filter, but the transition was too fast and too nasty, so instead we automated the frequency of the low and high pass filters so they opened out fully when the creature appears and closed back again at the end of the shot. The voice of the creature phone is panned hard left and right in our stereo mix and moves behind the listener in the 5.1 mix.
Following a particularly fast sequence, Prug jumps and lands on a key heavily. We decided to have some fun and punctuate this with the sound of an old typewriter bell. Towards the end of the typewriter dance, Prug tells Emo that the machine is like clockwork, and we managed to edit in the ADR with him saying this whilst gesturing to the highlighted clock at the same time. We also laid in a panned left to right swoosh at the same time to emphasise this.
The machine is like clockwork. One move out of place and you're down, couple.
In an entirely surreal world, we wanted to tie the audio to picture wherever possible by using sync points. The rising tension following the increased speed and volume of the heartbeat climaxes in the slap. We laid multiple slap recordings, but still the sound was very thin, so I added a slap sample to our own sound to fill it out, giving it an almost cartoon-like hyper-real sound.
In the final part of the second scene, Prug says "pulp" twice, whilst gesturing with his arm. It was important for the dialogue to sync perfectly with this, and also for the score to end exactly as that scene ended, with the last note of the music syncing with the final fade.
Pulp, Emo! Is that what you want? Pulp!